special guest, the man that 2,029 days ago, I sat in his living room on May 2nd, 2018, and which is 5 years, 6 months, and 19 days when we met. So I sat down with Cody in your living room, and I'll never forget the answer to the question that may have changed my life and many others forever. Cody asked the elephant in the room question, Mr. Havens, can we afford to have you on our team? Something of that realm. And you said, boys, you can't afford not to have me. And that could not have been a more true statement. And to this day, whenever someone says, I want to start a business, acquire real estate, do anything, I say, give me your keys. Give me the keys. And I hand them, they hand them to me, and I say, it's time to introduce you to Jim Havens. And you're going to give him the keys, you're going to sit in the back, and you're just going to shut up and let him do the job. Because that's exactly what happened with us.
Well, thanks.
That was a very, very special day for me. So Jim Havens, glad to have you on. This is a pretty special moment for me. You were one of the only people in the world that ever believed that Cody and I could buy our pipeline. Actually, you're probably the only one, and the other ones that ended up working with us probably were because of you, if nothing else. So, Jim, you're the owner of Havens Limited, which is your law firm. Cardinal Title, which is your title firm. Is that how you say it correctly?
Yeah, I mean, title insurance is kind of an obscure thing. So a title company, it's a commercial title company, and it manages transactions, and then it handles escrows and does what's called 1031 exchanges, which are tax-free exchanges. Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then Rudolph Investments.
Right.
So development management of property itself.
Correct.
So the Iron and Infrastructure Podcast is the name of the show.
Yep.
You are a guru when it comes to infrastructure development, all of that. That's your wheelhouse. Tell us a little bit about the niche of your three businesses and how you separate yourself from kind of everyone else with your specialty.
Well, sure. Let me go back to your story about Afford. Many people would look at the typical things that we do as a cost. And my insight, I think, early on was to try to figure out how to be of value. And that sounds common or trite, but many people, when they're interacting with an attorney, they look at you as a commodity. So it's like, how much is this going to cost me? We really tried to become highly focused on determining how can our efforts and insights create value for a client. So we measure our progress more by how much value we create rather than to look at the cost side of it. And so what we try to do is to protect and sustain and grow net worth. And so you mentioned our law practice. Our law practice is on the protection side, where we try to protect clients in transactions, how we help them move through the transaction, how we set up their entities. The sustain part of that moniker is our title insurance company, because we manage their money and move them through a process to sustain their wealth. And then with clients, we also on occasion partner directly with them. So they may have some kind of an issue that they can't get to the finish line on. And so we usually provide some essential link to them that we can't provide through our title company or through our law practice. So we'll provide the financing for them, or we'll assemble their construction team and those kind of things. So that's really the three ways in which we try to protect, sustain, and grow net worth.
And the law firm itself is probably a small portion of what you do, right?
It is. It's smaller. I spend more time in the development side because, again, if you look at value, it's much easier for us to create value for a client when we can be on the development side.
Right, absolutely. And then so you meet potential partners, later down the road by representing them through your law firm, and then you help them build net worth, and they go, into the development side of it. Along the way, it's a one-stop shop.
Correct.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so our law firm and our title company, become a source and a network for us, and an interaction for us to look at lots of different deals and transactions, and then we can be selectively beneficial to people that we meet through that network.
So you said something that, or touched on something that has been very, very impactful for myself. You talked about providing value. And I think one of the best life lessons I've ever learned is provide value with no expectation of a return. But the side effect of the value you provide, if it's high quality, will be the return. And it'll be much more than you would have ever asked for a lot of time. I've definitely learned that.
So it's the greatest things that happen to you in your life are unanticipated, right? So if you look back over your life, you have all these incredible things that happen. I mean, we do all this planning and we do these things by intention, but it's the unintended things that come along that come out of left field. You never anticipated it. And so if you have this value providing attitude, all these cool unanticipated things come to you.
And being authentic. I remember the day that Adam Lewin was speaking at an event, and my father-in-law works for Adam, and there was no reason why Adam Lewin should have gave me the time of day for where I was at that time and where he was at, coming off the stage of a Big Brothers Big Sisters annual luncheon. And that's where I waited for him probably a half hour, 45 minutes. I have no idea why that day, but I had a conviction that I was going to talk to him. I was going to shake his hand one way or the other. And that's who ended up introducing us to you. If I wouldn't have done that, we may not be sitting here right now, right?
Well, sure. And so you've touched on your great unique ability, and that is you are fearless about reaching out to people and interacting with them and being in the moment, and suddenly an unanticipated benefit occurred. And I knew Adam Lewin and that Lewin family who owned Hamilton Parker. When I was a little boy, I interacted with Adam's dad, and his dad was a lot like you. He just didn't have a stranger in his life, and interacted with tons of people, and he knew progress was made through people and networking.
Your network is very, very, the old saying, show me your network, I'll show you your net worth. There's so much value in that.
I learned it late. Yeah. So, I mean, you've learned it early, so you're way ahead of me there. I became highly focused on kind of my trade and my craft. I mean, that's kind of how we're trained. And so you're highly focused on that. Yeah. And, and unfortunately, schooling in a lot of institutions around us kind of turn us that way. They don't really what training do you ever get for networking? You don't get any training for that. So you're like you got great instincts. So.
Well, I'm lucky that I had a great mentor in you, because you have opened up the floodgates for me to develop a network, and you provided immense value, life-changing value for me and Cody, Jim. I don't think you're ever going to understand how much we really appreciate it. And the side effect of the value that you've created for us is the value that we're going to create for other people. And it just continues to happen. So the ripple effect of what you did for us is much bigger than what just indirectly, it's going to maybe change thousands of lives, down the road, because of, that one goal. For 12 years, it was my goal to try to buy our pipeline by the time I was 30. And I knew there was no way in hell I was going to do it by myself, but not only, did me and Cody partner up, but we were not capable of buying that company, without the representation needed. And the art of the deal was the key piece to that.
Yeah, you say that. You had the pieces, but you just needed a structure, an architecture, and a sequence that will allow you to achieve it. I mean, you'd done all the hard work. You'd spent all those years learning that business. You had completely gained the trust of the owner. And so a lot of the hard things you had done, we just had to be able to tell the story to a lender. And it just took us a while to find the right lender.
Well, there's a real reason why.
Understood the story and would have confidence in the story. So
look to your right up there on the screen. You see that 37K?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what that represents?
No.
That was my net worth. The last PFS that we did before closing on our pipeline was $37,000.
Okay.
So that's supposed to be a 45-pound plate, but I changed the 45-pound to 37K at the end.
Well, that's
January of 2019 was the last PFS.
wow.
And it was $37,017 and like 87 cents, and that was some equity in a house I had. We went all in on that deal.
Right.
We really did, but we would have never been able to do it without you. That was a life-defining moment. That 407 days from the day we sat down with Rick to the day we closed.
Was that what it was? It was over a year, right?
So we sat down with him on April 12th of 2018, and we closed on May 24th of
Right.
19.
Because we had several delays kind of
Yeah.
going down. Well,
Yeah.
first we had a.
The government shut down at one point, the SBA issues. There was
That's
quite a
right.
few, yeah. So I call it persistent patience.
Hmm.
So that's how I view myself.
Sure.
I used to kind of call it aggressive patience, but now I call it persistent patience.
Sure.
So I am persistent in my pursuit. I'm relentless, but because of that lesson from December 31st of 2018 to May 24th of 2019, I realized that sometimes if you force the timeline, you're not going to get a good result, because I was furious whenever we didn't hit that mark.
Yeah.
I wanted it bad, but the best thing that ever happened was not getting that. The amount of working capital, the cash restraint that we would have been in the first quarter of 2019 would have put us in a very tight spot right off the rip. And instead, with it being prolonged a few months, we were prime time as far as work weather. All of the ducks fell in the right arena, because we had a big storm ahead of us we couldn't see yet. And that was the best thing that's ever happened to me as far as developing some patience in life.
When you're in the moment of the transaction, you kind of put your own human sort of agenda and goals in place.
Mm-hmm.
And what you find, like you've done this 42 years plus that I've done it, what you see is that there is a kind of a global clock that makes sense when you look at it in reverse. It may not match sort of like what you had hoped for, you were anticipating,
Right.
but deals happen because they should, and the timing on the deals happen because they should.
And it's not in our control a lot of times.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
And if you try to force it, you're really doing something that is kind of against the grain that you'll, just...
The mistakes are going to be made, more likely, right?
Yeah, sure, no
I mean,
question.
if you try to force the outcome when it's not meant to be yet, then more likely something's going to go the way it shouldn't have.
No, and you think of all the wonderful unforeseen timing things that benefited you through that. So when you look at
100%.
the structure of the SBA deal and the later
Yeah.
things that came out from the government and all of those things, and just the overall timing of getting used to the processes that you needed to put in place to make your business more effective and
Yeah.
efficient. I mean, timing has worked out really well for you.
Yeah, it definitely, timing is everything. Doing what needs to be done to create the opportunity to be ready is, I think, the thing that a lot of people don't mention. Timing, like with the situation, is crucial, but you have to be prepared to execute in that situation.
You and Cody are stars. I mean, I think about somebody who's 18 years old and sets out to own that business. That's remarkable, really, to have that goal and that ambition.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys had done, that's what I said, you give me credit, but you deserve the credit. You had put in all those years of hard work and got ready for it, and you were ready to seize on that opportunity. So, no, it's exactly
Well, it was definitely a gas pedal moment whenever, on April 12th of 2018, that from that day forward, it was relentless. It was just nonstop, and it still is. But this is fun. I love what I do. I could not be having more fun with my day to day than I am right now, because it's hard, it's challenging, but every day it's like drinking from a fire hose of something new. I don't really assess situations as problems. I look at them as opportunities. Whenever a problem occurs in business, for me, I look at it more like you're hitting a growth spurt. You're growing outside of what your traditional, set processes or whatever would be in place. You're outgrowing them, and it's time to evolve somewhere. And normally problems arise, they create opportunities.
So don't you think, like, that's really, if you you're a business junkie, you or I am. We just start smiling. We talk about business and deals and things. But so that's one of the great things about it, that it allows you to sort of multiply and magnify yourself, right? So if you have a business, you think of all the people and the families that you are involved with in your team. And so suddenly you get all these multiplier effects, and that's exciting and fun. I mean, for people that like it. I mean, there's other people that don't want to be introverted and don't want to be exposed to all that. But if your goal is to have an impact and to have an exciting future, business is such a fun way to get that achieved.
It is.
Yep.
And you touched on fun, so I have to reference this quote, because I've never wanted to knock out an old man as much as I want to knock you out for about 3 seconds. And we're sitting in the war room after we just heard that the bank that we had originally dropped us. And you looked up and smiled and just said, "Isn't this fun?" And I still reference that moment today, because in the depths of hell, I felt like I was in a boxing match in the 12th round, and I was just about ready to be knocked out. And that at first infuriated me, but then I realized this is fun. I will never have this moment again as long as I live, because all the chips are in. There's absolutely nothing left to give. We can't give away anything else. We can't put anything else in. It's all in. Whether we make it or not, we will never probably be back in that situation again. And it really was like the 7th inning stretch for me. I recalibrated a little bit after my white knuckles came out, and I thought, man, this is fun, because I'll never have this situation again as long as I live. And this is the defining moment in my life as far as being an entrepreneur.
It was a defining moment, because we had, again, ideas about who should be our lender. We had ideas about that, and those ideas really needed to be thoroughly tested. And they got tested, and there was a lot of hope and anticipation put in that decision, and then suddenly it goes away. So for me, one of the reasons it's fun is because complexity. So what you were saying, this moment never happens again. Complexity creates interest. And so at that moment, I knew our situation was going to be complicated. There were a lot of options that were really available, how that could have gone in different directions about shared ownership. But my goal at that point was to figure out a way that you would not have to share ownership, and that you and Cody could do it on your own. And so, and I knew the road from that point would be complicated. But emotionally, we had a contract, we had the ability to buy this business, and then we lacked the funding, and so that was that's anxious. Produced a lot of anxiety,
right?
And the other thing I think we're all trained for is, like, if you go to school, you want to get a 90%, so 9 out of 10 times you want to be right. In business, you only need to be right 1 out of 100 times, and that still gets you the highest grade you need. And so that's not something people are really engineered to sort of absorb what's going on. It just beats you up.
Well, and whether it be a stock market or any type of investment, when it looks like it's going to get really bad, most people panic and pull, right? I heard an investor that invested $50,000 like 20 years ago, and it turned into $750 million. And he invested in Jeff Bezos and Amazon. And talked about that, where there was another guy that also had invested 50 grand and pulled out at the last minute. And that's a once in a lifetime, obviously, but you think about the restraint to not pull that out right when it gets really hard, or not give up when it's really hard. I would say a lot of people don't become successful because they give up when it's the hardest.
You're exactly right. So it's learning to be contrarian and to manage your emotions. So a saying is, emotions are not useful in decision making. Now, people can misunderstand what that means. They can think that emotions are not important. That's not what it means. But it's not useful in decision making. Right. And if you want if you want to manage your decision making by progress, if you can manage your emotions like you've said and resist those short-term urges when things seem to be emotional or risky, those people have long-term business success.
So I'm not analytical as far as me pulling analytics or doing the analytical side. As some on contract pricing and whatnot, I have to be, but I'm much more data driven now than I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Show me your homework. That's I say that often.
Mm-hmm.
You know, show me the measurable, show me the data to say yes or no, because decisions that we've had to make primarily have been on, you know, old advice that's probably outdated
Mm-hmm.
or instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And that only has a ceiling that's so high, and then you're not gonna, you know, take it to where you want to go. It's just going to get you where you are. And kind of back to the talk earlier about, isn't this fun? I forget who the saying, but it's, you know, a man goes and takes a drink of water out of a spring or whatever, and then comes back and to the same spring a later date, but it's not the same water and it's not the same man, right? So every situation that we go through later on down the road, it's going to be different. There's never going to be an exact same situation because we're different people. The situation's different.
You're exactly right. And as you evolve, you get better at and more capable at understanding yourself and how you fit in the world and what about it that you will make the biggest difference in. So, and part of that is what you just had said, and that is, you know, figure out the facts. You know, that's a saying that we have. We'll be faced with a puzzling situation, and your initial reaction to it, the emotional reaction to it, is not useful. You figure out, okay, let's look at all of the facts, and then suddenly you get a way of looking at things, and as you program yourself to do that, you able to make lots of better progress.
So I don't think I've ever talked to you about this, but the Pipeline of Prosperity newsletter that I have come out with, and by the way, Jim, I just have to acknowledge this for you know, me having a newsletter and third grade grammar and me not being a very good speaker and having a podcast. You know, it is an evolution for me, and this is a lot of fun because it's very vulnerable. I don't know what I'm doing. It's a new space. I thrive though in the not knowing and the opportunity to educate myself. And I've learned a lot about business in general from just being here and doing some homework and research and trying to figure out different areas that will probably evolve, you know, myself and our pipeline in the future as far as what our capabilities are.
So you're an opportunity creator because of that. You know, 95% of humans are totally uncomfortable in that realm. They want to know all the information, details, and facts ahead of time because they're emotionally afraid to jump into situations that have risk associated, where you're the opposite. You have total confidence in yourself, and you love the uncertainty of it, and so you love jumping into it, and you know that you'll figure it out. And the most important thing is to create the opportunity and then figure it out. And that's a reverse wiring. It's exceptionally useful in your part of the world.
So I thought that because I've always been told that I don't have any attention to detail, and I'm a 5 fact finder, so I need essential detail, which, you know, most high quick starts are not, you know, very high fact finders.
That's great.
So I need the essential detail, but I've worked with other people that were a 2 or 3 fact finder, and I could not believe the amount of detail I needed. So I felt the frustration probably from everybody else.
Yeah.
But I know that a lot of time, you know, it's like a diet. You can have the perfect diet put in place. You can execute on the plan, and it just isn't for you, and it doesn't work. A lot of things are kind of a trial and error. And maybe that's just, you know, me growing up and figuring out dieting and training. You know, maybe that's where I had the trial and error, but I've always been willing to jump into something knowing enough of it knowing maybe the start and the end, or what I want to do at the beginning and where I need to go, just not knowing the development side of it really has kind of been my sticking point.
Well, you very readily accept team members around you that assist in a lot of those type of things. So, I think some of that maybe you learn on working in the construction crew, when you're young and you see a lot of different personalities of people. And at first those personalities could annoy you, but what you come to recognize is that they have skill sets or ways of doing things that are different than yours are, that are beneficial.
Right. Just like me and Cody.
And so you can overlook those surface things that get people hung up typically. And hey, these people are useful on our team and they're going to help me make progress, and
100%.
And you feel comfortable with them. You like them.
Well, I mean, I always describe myself as an organizational dumpster fire on nitrous. That's literally how I describe it. I'm a 2 follow through, and it's, I've spent a lot of time with, I have my weekly planner that came from Strategic Coach. I made my own, and I put all my quarterly goals, my annual goals, my roles and responsibilities. I put everything in that planner. Yeah. And I'm still unorganized, It's been a sticking point for me forever.
So we look in administrative assistants like paralegals and things like that. The wiring that we crave are follow through wiring, because we come up with a lot of thoughts and ideas, and we have a lot of things that are down, but to have that person who will actually make the list and run you down and make sure that you get to the finish line.
The accountability.
They're extremely useful people.
Yeah. A true COO of a company, high follow through, high fact finder.
Yeah, they execute.
Yeah, very skilled in them areas. And I know a few people that are, if I had a project and I'm throwing shit against the wall, they would be the ones that pull it off the wall, put it where it needs to go. And, so I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses too, and I'm okay with my weaknesses. I'm okay not understanding or not knowing. At the end of the day, I am 100% authentic, and if it comes off the wrong way, so what?
Well, so just look at yourself and measure from where you started and where you are today in the business. If we would have followed the old school model, that you're not trying hard enough to work on all these weaknesses, you would have wasted a ton of time. So you've gone with your strengths and you've embraced them, and you found ways to spend your time there. And then you look at your net worth change, and people never ask you for your grade card, right?
Right.
They ask you for this.
Yeah.
They ask you what's your progress on your net worth, and that's the great thing about business. It allows you to give the world's evaluation of your capability. It's not some academic, or it's not some artificial environment that wants to grade you on a certain set of criteria. You're testing yourself against the world, and that's why your financial statement and net worth is a great way to
it really progress. Is. Yeah, it is really the king of all measurables, isn't it?
Yeah.
As far as business goes, I mean.
Sure.
Yeah.
And understand valuation and how you get there. What can you do to create that net worth gain, and what are your efforts and energies there? How do I best spend it? And you create opportunities. I mean, Jake, you've given us so many great clients over the years. I mean, it's just amazing, and so you've generated all kinds of great net worth for us and benefits to us, because you've sent us different business clients we've been lucky enough to help and work with, and so
there's
been great.
The value with no expectation of return, and that's what happens is open up a door for me, and I try to open up a door for you. Sure. I am a partnership person, and I think pride in our industry is a lot of that. It's all me, I, no we. And I remember me and Cody both were coming up through the field working with one foreman that would leave all day. And me and Cody would work our ass off all day. This guy would leave, and then he would come pick us up at the end of the day. We'd hop in the truck and go home. He'd call the owner and say, yeah, I did X, Y, and Z. I got this done. I.
Yeah.
And we had seen that a lot. And I think that's why we're so big on team unity. Me and Cody understood, and we had our own, discussions to get that trust, factor played out at the beginning. But we understood that it's not Jake open up a door and Cody doors, his door stays shut. I'm opening up my door, I'm opening up Cody's, and vice versa.
Right.
Like, we're opening up both doors, and we understood, yeah, we can go from, we can grow the company $10 million, individually, but together we can grow to $100 million at the same time,
Right.
because we're evolving, and then our strengths and weaknesses complement each other. So me and Cody are polar opposites. We're going to take a different route to get to the end, but we're going to the same place.
And thankfully you're opposites because you
Yeah.
cover each other's shortcomings. You know, what you said about partnering. One of the things that I noticed in my time in 42 years of business is that corporations, if you look at the top 10 publicly held corporations 40 years ago, and you look at them and how they were organized, and you look at today's corporations, one of the huge changes have been away from this very structured, hierarchical, to lots of partnering relationships. And so, like, you look at Microsoft or any of these big publicly held companies that are information-based companies, they're into a lot of partnerships. They do a lot of partnering back and forth. And so to have that partnering mentality fits with the way people want to interact today.
Not only that, so for me, I looked at it also, it was kind of a natural thing from probably just childhood growing up to see, I don't want to do it all myself.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't want to work that hard to get this.
Yeah.
But if you don't go into partnership or, look at your team around you like partners, who you place around you is also kind of a partner.
Sure.
So
that's a generational thing that's interesting to see, so in my, I'm a baby boomer, so I got to watch the behaviors of the older generations, they call the greatest generation, and sort of like their set ways that they think they should be.
Right.
And then you're watching younger generations, and that's been a big change in personal attitude.
Right. Well, tell me if this plays in or not. We went to a seminar in March in Chicago, and there was a gentleman that gave a speech and talked a lot about the global economy, but specifically the energy sector, and was talking about the amount of workforce. It was a workforce development portion of it. Talked about the workforce and the percentage of workforce by generation, baby boomer, Generation X, and up to the current generation. And it was decreasing every year.
Yep.
And he gave us, a great seminar. It was one of the best I've ever heard. After it was done, I did what I normally do, and I waited for him, and I went up and introduced myself, and I talked to him a little bit. And when he was talking, I was thinking about the generation that I came up in, and how, because of how I was raised in the pipeline world, or how I was treated in the pipeline world, is why I'm the way I am today. So the Great Depression, 1933, right? So your grandfather was probably living through that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what happens after the Great Depression? Everybody has a scarcity mindset.
Exactly.
But now, I was kind of raised at the end of that, but the generation now, they don't have any family ties to that. I think, is there, that 3 to 4 generation gap in the last almost 100 years now, where that mindset has went the other way with technology, because you have instant access to everything in the world. There's not a scarcity of food because you can go to any street corner and get food instantly, cheap, where now there's an abundance, which is why society is probably so soft now.
No, I would have never thought of that, but that's exceptionally insightful. So you do think about the way that generation was raised and what the economy provided, and it really was an economy based on scarcity. You talked about saving your pennies. That generation would have never had the idea that they could create their own abundance. And so you move through manufacturing, service, and now information, and you think about how few resources it really takes to unlock all of those capabilities in your mind. It's it's held in your hand, and it's you can create your own app or your own intellectual property. And so this ability for abundance is a mindset that's been reinforced by gaining distance from that depression set people. And I hadn't thought of that. That's
And so it
Interesting.
ties back into the original thing we talked about was value.
Yeah.
I'm on a mission to create our pipeline is going to be a place of immense value for everyone. I care about people personally. If I can help inspire them or help change their life personally, professionally, the outcome will be there. But just caring about someone on a professional level is not going to work in the next 20 years. I truly don't think that it's going to be, opportunity for higher wages. Yeah, that's great. But free time with your family, prioritizing, what matters to people, I think is really going to be kind of the future.
No, your
Direction.
interest and willingness to develop people completely is a huge factor.
And it's great. I create value for others when I can because I've been through situations that a lot of people are just coming into. I've already went through. So kind of like you creating value for me, I've been able to create value for others. And if I can expedite their journey through the hardship, kind of like you did for me,
No.
it all comes back to that circle of helping other people. And a lot of time the value that, I can provide back to you isn't just the recommendations, the referrals, but the amount of other people that I can help.
Sure.
And that's what entrepreneurship's all about. That's what network's all about.
Oh, you're excited when other people have success. That it genuinely excites you.
I get as excited about other people overcoming obstacles as I do myself sometimes.
Sure. No, it is.
Yeah.
It's and the interest that you're taking in the people that work with you, there really is not a place that they could go to and get that same sort of insight and support.
Mm.
So, the stuff that you've learned through Coach and all the personal development things and the different ways in which you see the world, to be able to pass that on to them. I already see it. I follow, I follow their stories on Twitter. I see their stories of different employees and stuff, and you are making a huge difference. Cool.
So back to the emotion. We talked about making emotional decisions. So I want to go back to that real quick.
All right.
I came up with something because of my own overcoming a problem, which I call opportunity. So this year had a situation that was kind of hindering. I didn't know where to go, what to do on it, and I was using too much emotion and not enough logic, not enough facts. So I developed what I call the Pipeline of Prosperity Problem Solving Guide. It's the 5 Ps. And the first one is presentation. So the first P is the presentation, and really it is taking a third-party view of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So removing your emotion from the situation. So you're presenting the facts to yourself from a third-party lens.
Mm-hmm.
So all head, no heart, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is, I think, the first step in actually overcoming obstacles is not what do I want it to be, so I'm thinking it should be this.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? What is the actual fact of the situation? So the presentation, the first step is to present all the facts of the situation and fully understand the reality of it.
Mm.
And then do not forget during this time that problems will always arise, and most problems are a positive sign of growth. Outline what needs to happen from your viewpoint with the facts, who you need to collaborate with to solve the problem, and how you hope to learn from the outcome. The commitment has to be 100%. That is the most important step of the first part.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be committed to fixing it and how you're going to go about it and who you want on your team and all that. The other part is the positivity part. I'm a big positivity person, and it's not a blind optimistic, it's positive. So what you focus on, you normally will get back. So if you're skiing down a hill and there's one tree and you just sit there and think about not hitting that tree the whole time, more than likely you're going to nail the tree, right?
Right.
Almost call it manifesting, call it whatever you want. So when the problem arises, if you focus on the problem and not the solution, the problem escalates and it gets bigger and it becomes a cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So positively recognize the reality of the situation, take all the personal emotion out of it, understand that minimal time can be spent on the problem. So 10% of your time is on the problem, just enough to pull the facts and the analytics out of it to create the solution.
Mm-hmm.
minimal time on that, problem. Do not focus on the problem itself. 90% of energy needs to be positive and focused on the solution. So what you focus on, what you manifest, is more likely going to be the outcome.
Right.
Regardless if you know how or why yet, that's normally the situation.
It turns your perspective from rear view to front view.
Right.
Yep. Makes
So
sense.
so presentation is the first part. Then partnership is the second.
Yeah.
That's where you collaborate. You get your team around you, and knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and then puzzle pieces fitting accordingly. But you have to make sure that everyone on that team is 100% committed,
Yeah.
because I think commitment is a big thing. Where
Yeah.
if someone's iffy on the situation,
Yeah.
it's going to bring down the commitment from everybody else.
Yeah.
Then the third step is the planning. So you have your team, and then us in this situation being the leaders. So we create the team, and then we go to the planning stage. So that's when you execute, develop your plan. Take the team, build your plan. This step is crucial to be completed fast, so the action can be taken immediately, especially depending on the situation.
Mhm.
But if it's a quick immediate action need, then don't sit around and just plan forever.
Procrastinate.
Put a plan in place, and that's just how I operate anyway. So
Not how most people operate,
Right.
but that's
right.
a wonderful attribute.
But progress over perfection, because normally
Yeah.
when a situation arises,
Right.
when we started on the journey to buy our pipeline, we could have never planned all the things out that happened. We had to plan accordingly to what we had in front of us, right?
Right.
Same situation here. So progress, not perfection. Keep that in mind. And after that, it's the performance stage. So the fourth step is performance. Take massive action and execute the plan. So go execute, fix whatever it is, figure out the solution. But then the last step, I think, is very important. Prosperity. So prosperity, successful or thriving, is how I use the definition mostly, and it's defined that way. But after you figure out the solution, reflecting on the accomplishment as a whole, acknowledging the gain of it, right?
Mhm.
Not the gap. So reflect on the accomplishment and take notes on what you learn. And then positive mindset, win or learn, never lose. So I've seen a lot of mindset not being positive that drives the situation into a pit of hell that you can't get out of.
Right.
And I reference what's the best way to get out of a hole? Put down the shovel and quit digging.
Yeah.
So in this situation, understand that I dug this hole. Now I'm out of the hole. Now I'm going to put all the dirt back in it, and I'm moving on. And putting the things in place, the data in place. When you see signs of that coming up again, then it's a trigger. You understand it.
You realize you've articulated a process that you sort of had done naturally, but you've given it an architecture now.
And the only thing I haven't naturally been good at is that first step is presenting all the facts. I go right to the chaos.
Yeah.
So that's where that was
you've
the
learned-
learning part for me.
Yeah, so you've learned that though through experience, and I found that with quick starts. Many of them get to a certain point and they can't overcome where they're at, and most of it has to do with their their willingness to really go through that and look at facts, because they're so impatient about it, and that kind of is a little bit of drudgery for them. It drags up a lot of the old stuff where you spent a lot of time in school and classes you didn't like.
I was a C student for a reason. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, if you can be patient enough to look at facts, that's what kind of lets you jump through that next hoop.
The fact finder part was never. I always thought I was just depleted on actual facts, but I'm much more analytically driven than what I've ever been before. Well,
and you have to measure things. I mean, you have
absolutely.
to be willing to do it.
Yeah.
And so, you've done that in your business. Like if you think of the financial component of your business and the tools that you've implemented there, it's giving you good data and facts now, and a lot of your decision making has been driven by those facts.
100%. Yeah, we're not going to evolve.
I love this, by the way. This is wonderful.
Yeah, we're not going to evolve to where we want to go if we don't evolve our processes, how we analyze data. I understand that now. I understand the importance that I can't just work harder and make it happen. I can't just
Right.
hire people. I have to know where I'm going and why I'm going there. And that's been probably a turning point for me in the last few years, that everything I had done up until 2020 or so was a problem putting out a fire, but not evolving past that initial sticking point.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm more focused on what's in place that's good, that's not great,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a lot of time, than what is, you know, a reactionary dumpster fire. You know, we've evolved very, very smoothly throughout the last 4 years with R&R Pipeline.
Well, think of what, you picked a business timing that was before one of the great economic events in U.S. history, right? So
Yeah.
you have the pandemic that comes in afterwards,
Right.
and you've navigated all of that complexity.
We had, in 2019, our biggest client had a big organizational issue. They sold off a branch of their business, and it was very, very unknown for a while. And then COVID hit. We flatlined that year.
Right.
You know, there was a lot of potential opportunities that went our way. You know, we created an advantage out of them.
Right.
COVID was a blessing for us because it didn't restrict our work, but it did slow it down.
Right.
And we were able to process what was going on. And in
Right.
that time, you know, our vice president was no longer with us, and our controller was no longer with us.
Right.
So the two most senior people in the business that knew the business side of it, me and Cody knew the safety and the operational side,
Right.
but we hadn't figured out much of the business yet. And that gave us the time to kind of rebuild. And that's when we started building our foundation with the fractional CFO and everyone else from there. If we wouldn't have had that slowdown period, we might not have been able to do all that
Right.
in that time.
Right.
Opportunity though, right?
Sure. And-
Timing's everything, but you got to be prepared for it too.
And think about how much better your systems and processes are now.
Right. And we have an operating system in place. Our team's stronger than it's ever been. We have the best team as far as well-rounded personnel that we've ever had.
That's great.
And I have full confidence and faith in all of them.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
been in a hard environment because you've had a lot of other competitors compete for those kind of workers
Right.
too, and you've been able to retain them,
Right.
and that's huge.
We don't micromanage. I think
Yeah, it's a culture.
the
It's
industry-
a cultural thing,
and
Yep.
I think it's a generation thing too.
I agree with you because
Yeah.
younger people feel that culture. I mean, people in my generation, it's kind of like you got used to working in difficult cultures. You just didn't complain
Right.
about it. But now it's more of a human value that's, in addition to earning money, you also want to be in a culture that doesn't drain you and is
And people want to be
reinforcing.
recognized for what they're
Sure.
doing too. And I think
Sure.
that's something that's really understated with our industry. I see all the time high level, high accomplished people that want everyone to acknowledge them. I don't want anyone to acknowledge me. Acknowledge the team.
I saw that with a lot of, as you know, I grew up in a construction
Mhm.
family, and I worked around a lot of very capable blue collar people. And I could see the things that they could do. They could read blueprints and they could do all these things, but they never were acknowledged. I mean, their names were never on the buildings.
Yep.
They were always overlooked. They were always taken for granted, even
Yep.
though they were exceptionally capable. You
Yep.
know, that's
And what partnership opportunities are being missed because of that?
sure,
You know, some people just want to feel appreciation every day.
sure.
Don't want to come to work. I call it a bureaucratic hamster wheel, and I think Dan Sullivan references something close to that.
Yeah,
He always talks about a bureaucratic system, but
yeah,
if people get up every morning, roll out of bed, and they hop in their car and just start driving, where the hell are they going, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's something else that is not talked about very often.
yeah.
So in the book, I call it Journey to the Next Destination. But if you don't know what the next destination is, then what does the journey look like?
Yep,
And if you don't know what the journey looks like, then what the hell are you doing?
sure.
And it sounds so simple, but if you put the destination might be 2 months ahead of you, right? It might be a quarterly goal. But if you know what you're going, where you're going, you know why you're going there, and what the outcome should be when you get there, it's a lot more enticing to get up with a smile every day and come to work. Our industry is full of people that have made poor decisions, you know, as far as health,
Yeah,
as far as taking care of their body. Personal development is not really a known thing. I went against the grain. I used to have headphones in the truck on the way to job sites. You know, I started personal development at probably 23 because I wanted to educate myself in areas that I had never been educated. It was a natural desire for me to learn because I never learned in school.
Well, for a lot of people, it's too soon for them. You know, I see a lot of people, I call them late bloomers. I mean, put a different word on
Yeah.
it. But they need enough life experience to sort of figure out that what they're doing isn't really working very well.
Right.
And then they develop their own capabilities. And I see it a lot in construction. It kind of unlocks that ability for
Yeah.
people who are forced into academic environments, and now they can function in the real world.
Right.
So it's made a big difference.
And I think I was just forced to function in the real world at a young age,
Yeah.
and it just helped me out,
Sure.
you know, expediting my journey. But
well,
I
you
didn't.
had great habits that were formed. You knew how to work, you know, so work hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge thing. If you
And
can work hard,
Right.
it means a lot.
Right. I started working out at 13 ish,
Yep.
dedicated to working out.
Yep.
I started going on diets at probably 14 because I was the fat kid that got picked on in school, which was the reason I started working
I
out.
can't. That is so bizarre to
Yeah.
me that I can't look at you and think like you
So-
walk into a room and I mean you look like
Well, I've been disciplined for almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't you
I
know,
get that.
like it's been a long, long journey to
Like
get
you
to the
as a
point I'm
fat
at.
kid, that's funny.
It is, but I'll tell you what. You know what's funny is the two biggest fears of my life were having my shirt off in front of people and public speaking.
Oh
My whole entire childhood,
Look at how that's changed.
and even now, it's still like that insecurity is still in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Well,
So-
that doesn't surprise me because it's a driver. It'll drive
It
you
is.
at your
It'll
core.
never go away. I know that.
Right.
But
I get
just
that.
like any other fear, whenever fear comes up, it's not everybody has fear. I don't care how confident you are. Everybody has fear, but it's how you face the fear when it hits you is what is important. A coward and a hero both have fear. The coward runs from it, and the hero wraps his arm around fear and says, "Come on, if you're going with me, let's
yeah,
go."
you face it.
Right? Face it. So, I can't sit here and say I don't have fear. Getting on a podcast is fearful for me because it's something that is an insecurity. But that's why I'm also doing it, because I know that facing my lifetime fear might help other people out. And the network of people around me, the knowledge that I've learned from other people, definitely will help other people out. So I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm willing to face my fear. And I thrive in uncertainty.
Well, and that makes it unusual because to listen to a person facing those things is interesting. To listen to somebody that has some polished way in which they always do something and it's just, you know, sort of part of a unthought out, ungenuine presentation is just not interesting.
Right.
So it makes it interesting.
There's nothing real organized and thought out for me.
It's exciting. Let's see what happens next.
I get the essential facts, essential details, all I need. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we will be right back. This episode is brought to you by Corey G Fitness. Go to CoreyGFitness.com for all your training, nutrition needs, personal development, enhanced lifestyle. CoreyGFitness.com. And I should have known the analytical, the data-driven side of it. But let's talk about that. So you were a high-level runner for a while, 3 times a week, 5 miles each time, right? So about 15 miles a week. At 23 years old is when you started. So how long did you do that? Quite a while.
So let me tell you why I did it.
I love it.
So my dad died of a heart attack when I was 4 years old. And so that scared the death out of me. I mean,
How old?
I was 4.
4. Okay.
And he was 44 years old.
Wow.
And so I was 4 and my sister was 1 and my mother was a German immigrant. I was actually born in Germany, and we came to Columbus, Ohio because of the Defense Construction Supply Center there. You go past that facility, that federal facility, that big, they used to call it the depot. That's where my dad got transferred from Germany. And so we came there and bought a house on the east side, real close to where that facility is. And so I'm 4, my sister's 1, and he drops dead of a heart attack. So that has a earth moving impact on you. I mean, it forms a baseline in your life that never goes away.
Yep.
So I became obsessed with avoiding that. I just didn't want that to happen. And so I tried to figure out what way could I insure myself against that from happening. And so around that age, I just said, well, if I run 5 miles 3 times a week, I think I can prevent that from happening, and I can survive and survive longer than he did. So for the longest time, it was just my goal to get past age 44. It was kind of like a big black curtain in my life. And
Really?
so I thought, that's why I was in such a hurry to do everything, because I thought, he didn't make it to 44. I better get everything I need to get done by age 44. And so I had that as my routine, and I kept that routine. And I was able to, you say a high level runner, I wouldn't say it that way. I was a consistent runner. Given my body build, you see these real wispy greyhound looking characters that can run like the wind. That wasn't me, but I was consistent at it. And I did it until age 50. So when I lived on the east side of Columbus, when I lived in Granville, I would always go once a year to a 5-mile race or, an event. So in Bexley it was called the Turkey Trot. Granville is called the Firecracker 5. And I would just kind of see my times just kind of creep down over time, over the years and stuff. But I got to the point where the joints did not let me. I could have kept going, but then I started to see like friends who started having knee and hip replacement. I didn't want to do that. Yeah. So I moved to more elliptical type stuff. But eventually then in 2013, I had a goal, and that goal was to go from where my father was born on the Mississippi River, which is where Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri come together in a tiny little place called Warsaw, Illinois. And I want to ride my bike from there to where he's buried, in near where we live now on the Licking County, Franklin County line at that Glenview Cemetery. It's about 420 miles. And I thought, so I started to train for. I got a decent bike, and I started to train for it. And so he would have been in 2000. He was born in 1915. So on May 22nd, 2015, he would have been 100 years old. So when it was my goal to do that before he was 100, but I didn't have enough confidence that I would do it the first year I tried. So I scooted back a year to 2013, and I got on a bike at where his farm is. My cousin still owns that farm. We went to a family reunion that was there, and I got on my bike, and over 7 days, I rode about 60 to 70 miles a day, and I did it.
It's incredible.
It sounds but it was just 4 hours a day. It was just a mythology. It's just, that's how I've made progress. I know if I commit myself to this and I do it and I stay consistent with it, then I'm trying to engineer a future success if I say I do these things.
Non-negotiables.
Yeah,
I
just did it, and so it wasn't as terrible as I thought, and so I thought, this was kind of fun. So the next year, I said, well, since I rode from that point there, what if I went 400 miles the other way and I rode to the family reunion? And that just set up a series of events that I eventually rode across the United States in sections, and I would do it. Usually, I take a week around Father's Day, and I take a week around Thanksgiving. And I did that from 2013 to 2023, April to April.
It's incredible. 24,000 miles in 10
Total,
years.
Yeah, I rode 24,000 miles.
That's incredible.
But what I was really watching was my heart rate. So what I figured out early on, because this heart thing, it's got me obsessed.
Is it a genetic thing? Is there a genetic component to it?
No, I don't know. They didn't really understand much about heart health in 1961 when he died.
Yeah.
That was just the evolution where they were beginning to figure out that cigarette smoking and other kinds of things
Might not be the best.
might not be a good
Yeah.
idea. And people didn't understand how, and doctors, they had commercials with doctors
Yeah.
smoking cigarettes in the
Smoking on
60s.
bus, children on airplanes. I mean, it was everywhere,
Sure.
right? Yeah.
No, I mean, there were smoking sections on
Yeah.
airplanes. Yeah, sure. So, I don't, but eventually I was lucky I picked that metric because I think today one of the most informative metric of healthfulness is your ability to hold your aerobic heart rate at a certain level. And so I started keeping track then on my bike. And the reason I had those numbers is I started keeping track of what my heart rate was and for how many hours. It measures hours. So not so much the miles that made a difference to me, but I wanted to be able to average 3 hours per week at 70% of my maximum heart rate. And I felt if I do that, that's a really good indication of fitness and it would protect me.
Yeah. I'm more enamored with a deeper portion of it, that you wanted to do this, not sentimental, not
No.
anything else, but because you didn't want to stay the same as what had happened before, hypothetically, right? You don't really know for sure, but you knew that there was something that was going to hinder you or something that was going to be a restraint in your life or a progress in your life, and you chose the
No
progress.
question. I wanted to own my future. I didn't want it to own me. So, I just sort of felt, it's going to sound a little crazy, but I didn't believe that the world was a place that was going to naturally take care of me. I couldn't sit by passively and just sort of assume that the world was a safe place that was going to take care of me. I assumed the opposite very early on, that I needed to influence and take control of what the future was. And so I wanted to always carve out goals that would allow me to sort of manage my own future. I would say it that way.
Focus on what you can control, right?
Yes.
I mean, attitude and effort to things that are always in your control and pretty much everything else isn't. And, that's why I'm big on positivity, because the attitude that you go into a situation with, a lot of time, the effort applied to that attitude can really change the dynamic of it.
Well, Jake, your focus on health and how much energy it gives you and your commitment, like you get up so early in the morning and you do tons and tons of, you spend a lot more time than I have as far as focus on that. But I can just see it in your energy levels, your enthusiasm, your confidence. It forms the basis of doing that. Because if you sort of don't feel good or you feel less than 100%, it turns you into saying, okay, well, I'll skip this. I won't do that.
Yeah.
I don't have that. But you know what? You have capacity now to work. And I was always able to work long hours and long shifts. I mean, I just was able to do it.
I do it because I'm selfish also, because I have to be selfish. I have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning when that alarm is set. It is a non-negotiable. There's been times I went to bed at 11 or midnight and felt like hell the whole day, but it's non-negotiable because I need that release. I need that.
Yeah.
That is my free time.
Yeah.
That is my violent sanctioned time that's really therapeutic. Even doing this right now is therapeutic to me in some regard, because it's insightful. I'm really interested in Jim Havens. I'm really interested in what you have to say and how your brain works. I'm always interested in what people have to say. And as bad as I am as a listener, I'm trying to really acquire that skill at a high level, because I've learned a lot from listening to other people with personal development, coaching. And so it's really like an initiative of mine now to be a better listener and being present. But I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because I'm selfish. But what I realize, I have to put all of myself first, because if I don't, then everyone else gets a lesser version of me. So there's times where you do have to be selfish, where if you put your wife before yourself and then you're miserable. Well, she's getting a lesser version of you, right? Or anything in any type of friendship or partnership, you have to do things that are going to put you in the best headspace, that are going to make you the most valuable to others that you care about. And so I look at it another way too, as far as who you look up to. So growing up, everyone has their own superhero, whether it be, a Spider-Man or Superman, and then you normally latch on to a person that has an impact in your life.
Yep.
But what I've realized, Jim, for me in the last few years, I have to be my own superhero, but not who I am today, who I strive to be in 10 years. And that's why my discipline is non-negotiable, because in 10 years, the person that I want to be has non-negotiable discipline in place. So for me in 10 years to be my superhero, to become that person that I strive to be for my kids and for my family and everybody else, I have to get up when it's time.
Yeah, you're lucky you figured that out early, because unless you yourself are 100%, you don't have the same value that is needed by anyone else. You gotta be the best you first.
Right.
I mean, because everything else just doesn't work unless you are.
And everybody on this earth is special in their own regard. They're talented. They're born for a reason. Just being born alone is an achievement, right? And so many people, if they looked at the facts on that, they would understand. But everyone has a purpose in life, but actually figuring out what that purpose is and actually defining your own success. Success isn't us sitting here talking about business ownership and entrepreneurship. To us, it is. This is success to us. This is fun for us. But success could be, being a volunteer.
Sure.
Being a school bus driver.
Oh, absolutely.
Being a teacher.
No, absolutely.
Giving back to the communities.
No, you and I know those construction guys, and they're on top of the world. They come out there. They are king of that construction site. They're completely 100% self-satisfied, happy. You see it with moms and kids. You see it with people who work in charitable organizations.
And that's
absolutely,
great. Yeah. And that's part of the message I want to get across to people. It's what I'm doing is no one else's success. It's mine.
Sure.
Right? Everyone has to define their own success. But it's pretty common not to know what that looks like, too.
Yeah, they let the world run them instead of them run the world.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a mind shift.
Yeah, and it was for me, and going out on my own and just fighting everything and everyone that I'd ever been around growing up, and anyone that had influenced my life did influence it, but it influenced it to see something different. That's what I want to do here. That's the big picture of this. To me, the iron has built a calloused mindset for me, a relentless energy, and the ability to be confident enough to take risk and do this. Infrastructure is building society, right? Everything that is society, economical, but it's also your personal infrastructure. So how can you take, iron, whether it be wellness, fitness? We have different avenues on our wellness, but we're both focused on our wellness for building our personal infrastructure.
No, it's a foundation point.
And then just like the pipeline of prosperity is, what are you putting in your pipeline to be successful? What are you putting in your pipeline to achieve prosperity? That's what it's all about. That's why the newsletter coming out, I'm starting at the very basics, because I want guys to understand that The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy is one of the most valuable books.
Yeah.
That's the one that I just put in my newsletter. There's 10 or 15 different bullet points in there that will change your life if you apply it. Because just like you said earlier about the consistent habits and getting better just a little bit every day, you're not going to conquer the world in one day. But if you keep chipping away at it and keep putting bricks on top of bricks every day, eventually you're going to get to the point you want to be there, right?
No, that's true.
There's a lot of power in that.
You are anywhere you are in the current part of your life, you're the cumulative habits of your life to that point. And so the one thing you can do is you can keep acquiring better and better cumulative habits, so you have that better you that you're talking about in 10 years for sure.
You're 100% disciplined to your existing set of habits.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you have bad habits, then you have bad results. And if you have good habits, you have good results. It's that easy. It really is.
Keep bad habits. You acquire enough good habits to crowd the bad ones out. That's what you're hoping for.
Right. And for me, I'm at a different level now than I've ever been in my life. Probably 8 to 10 weeks ago, I was talking to Corey Gregory at the gym one morning, and I've had gut health issues my whole life. So kind of like you're aware of the heart thing, right? It's something that's always on your mind, regardless if it's conscious or not. It's always there.
Right.
And you make decisions to overcome that.
Right.
Gut health has been something that I've struggled with my entire life. I had a bunch of food allergies with testing done. It's been a constant struggle for years. And now I understand it much more. So now I'm much better off. I decided to switch my lifestyle up a little bit. I wasn't eating bad, but I wasn't consistent the way I needed to be.
That's tough. You listen to people that overcome that struggle, and that's a challenge.
For me, heartburn, things of that nature. And I wasn't eating anything I was allergic to. So I was 15 or so different things. One of them being pepper. So I go out to eat. I can't put seasoning on a steak.
Right.
Like, I have to be very conscious of that. And I didn't make any drastic, crazy change. I just switched a few things and just stayed consistent. And I think it was probably 6 weeks. I'm kind of at my set point now. And probably 5 or 6 weeks, I lost 15 pounds.
Yeah, you look incredible.
All my body fat fell off, and I wasn't trying to do that. My training really didn't change that much. Outside of my ability to train harder, a little bit longer, a little bit heavier. I went from 245 to 250. I'm about 230 to 233 right now.
Wow.
And I have never felt better. I've never looked better. I did a competition 10 years ago. 2013, in April 2013, I did my first competition.
See, you and I, 2013
to
that's 2023.
wild, isn't it?
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah.
But
Cool.
10 years ago, I did a competition, and
It's fun to look back over 10 years,
It is.
isn't it?
I'm 30 pounds heavier now and look better, feel better, and I would have never, 10 years ago, placed myself here right now.
Wow. Wow.
That's
Yeah.
for
Look
sure.
at the last 10 years.
Yeah.
What a great journey.
Yeah. It has definitely been a great journey. My God, I could have never wrote that story out.
And just lived it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Let's talk about one last topic, and then I'll let you get out of here. I called you probably 3 years ago and asked you a question, and you said, I don't know, I'm going to paraphrase, but I think it was something along the lines of, holy shit, it's time for you to get a strategic coach.
Yeah.
Because it was a business development question. I don't even remember what exactly it was.
Yep.
Something about acquiring customers, but it was in regards to business development.
Yeah.
And you had told us about Coach before we closed on the deal.
Mm-hmm.
You said it'd probably take us 5 years or so before we were ready for it. And I'm finishing up my third year. I just went to my workshop last week. It has transformed my life. It has absolutely evolved me, between coach and network more than anything.
Right. Me
My
too.
mindset different, time management's different. My viewpoint of how I operate, how you operate. Strategic coach has its own little profile, and you basically can speak a different language when you understand it.
Right.
And it is amazing.
We've been speaking some.
I know.
For sure.
And it's amazing the people that understand it. It's like we automatically know who that person is,
Right.
right? Strategic coach to me, the last 3 experiences at Coach, all 3 of them, maybe 4, I've came back a different person. The first couple of years, I really didn't feel like I belonged there. And now I know I do. And it's powerful when you have that transition. I don't know if you went through something similar to that.
I did.
And when I realized that I'm meant to be here, the way that I viewed Coach and the way that I viewed the world, it changed. It instilled a confidence in me. My intent's always been good. My confidence on what I want to do and my intent's always been good. But my confidence with my value is probably the big changer for me this year, where I go into an atmosphere of high achievers, highly skilled
Yeah, intimidating.
personnel.
A little intimidating.
And it was intimidating for probably the first year for me. And then I became more of an intimidator, I guess. I'm very outspoken in Coach, and I enjoy participating.
Yeah.
And I feel like the problem-solving guy that I kind of went through earlier.
Yeah.
I had a couple other things that I had read off in Coach that I had just put notes together that morning about fear, and it like impacted some people there. So I started to understand the last year my value. But tell me about your time in Strategic Coach, and thank you again for that recommendation. I think I've talked to you after me being there almost every time. But
well, I had a friend of mine, Ralph Antolino Jr., who I went to law school with, and Ralph had gone into Coach, and as you know from your attendance there, there are a lot of financial planning, finance kind of people that do very well through,
Very well.
through it's very applicable to a lot of the things that they do. And I would read about it, I would look at it, and Ralph kept kind of coaxing me, you should do this. And, you know, I had that same personal valuation issue. I thought, oh, the people that go there, they are so powerful and important, and I'm just a little guy. And I let that probably negatively influence me for too long. And then once I did go, I found that I used the word architecture once before. Like, you've created an architecture now for your personal progress by the system that you had described. And so what this does is it validates an architecture that you know it has existed, but you never really put a frame around it that would allow you to implement it with confidence, because you're going against the grain. You know, you are living a life that's going against the grain.
And I didn't even understand that as much until recently too, but yeah.
So you're living a life, and it's a life it's solo. So, you know, you don't have a lot of people to consult with. I mean, you're not in a big bureaucratic organization surrounded by a bunch of colleagues that are reinforcing it all. And so you're running on your own. And so suddenly now you have this powerful architecture which allows you to make progress. And then what you realize is that you do have a high degree of value when you start to interact with your colleagues there, because this idea that you had mentioned that everybody has a unique capability inside of them, well, it also gives you the ability to unlock and articulate what that capability is. Once you can articulate that, then suddenly you differentiate yourself from the others in the room. You realize that you have a highly valuable skill that can create lots of value.
And everybody does, but sometimes the hard part is pulling it out and figuring out what it is, and a lot of people never do.
I had a friend at Strategic Coach. His name was Richard Walsh. He's from Montreal. And we went through an exercise about identifying your unique ability. And I said it 2 or 3 different times. He goes, you know, you're not really saying it correctly. He just drove it at me. And he never let me live that down. It took me 2 or 3 years where I finally, at the end of 3 years of him pestering me to be more and more accurate about what it was, I finally figured it out.
Is your unique ability something that's always going to evolve? Or do you think it does evolve over time? Or do you think it's more you have a base and then it's how you instill it?
No, I'd say it gets more insightful. Yeah. So the way I would articulate my unique ability is that I have the ability to sit and listen to someone and articulate their goals, and by asking them a series of questions, understand sort of what capabilities and what skills and lack of skills and lack of needed partnering exists for them to achieve where that goal is. And so I then can come up with a sequence of events. My brain can order a sequence of events that allows them to most efficiently get to that goal. So in your situation, I was listening to you and Cody, and I was hearing, I have 12 years of field experience. I know this business. I know it better than anybody does. You may be young, but you've got lots of experience. So people who buy in a business that don't understand it, that's extremely dangerous. I thought, okay, risk number 1 is crossed off. Number 2, do I have a willing seller? Yep. You have a founder of this company. He respected you guys. He loved you guys, and he wanted you to be able to buy it. And he was going to help facilitate that process. So again, my brain started figuring out, okay, you know, Cody and Jake are here. They want to get here. And how do we get there? And so my brain was filling in what were the gaps in that sequence.
Right.
And so I knew then really our only real issue was finding the financial component of it and how do we put that story together.
I didn't even put value in my experience. The only thing I seen was the wall of the financial issue.
Here, you know,
and that's the difference.
But see, here's the thing though, that's always the case.
Right.
Everybody always overlooks their strengths. They always do.
Undermining your value.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
It's very, very common. And I think you even had referenced doing that for years.
Now, you figured it out way earlier than I did. So I always overestimated people and underestimated myself. And so but, you know, that's a motivator. you know, when you walk into the room humble and you think everybody else is smarter than me, that's humility. It just drives you. So some of that's okay. Too much of it's terrible.
Right. I have my business coach called it humble confidence, because it's not about me getting it right. It's about it being right. It's about getting the right answer. I don't care to take credit for anything, because I know who I am. I'm confident in my ability, and I can be humble in any situation enough to
Sure.
let someone else get acknowledged for the solution, and me not be that person. I could care less.
I mean, you demonstrated that continually. So
I know who I am and what I want out of life, and I don't need to be acknowledged. I don't wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, Jim, and work out as hard as I do to look the way that I do for anybody but myself. I promise you that.
yeah,
It's the same in business, though. It's not, me and Cody own our pipeline. So unless someone comes and buys it from us, essentially we're going to be the most accomplished people at our pipeline to date, right?
right.
But that's not about what makes our pipeline better. Us creating value for ourselves isn't making our pipeline better. Us creating value for everybody else does.
No,
That's where the company thrives.
that's your growth engine, for sure.
100%. My unique ability, at least my first draft, is motivating others, building and enhancing relationships, and confidently leading by example in order to inspire others by seeing opportunity they cannot see. And just what you did for me, though, that's exactly what you did for me. You instilled a confidence in me, whether you know this or not, by seeing an opportunity I couldn't see. And I'll never forget, I was talking to you one day. I was heading to Athens, Ohio. I was at a rest area and on 33, right before Logan. And I was sitting there talking to you, and you were ranting and raving about something that I was coming up on. It might have been when I was looking to buy into Max Effort. And you said, Jake, you were going to make one big business move every year, or one big purchase every year for the next 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, Jim, you're full of shit.
Mm.
But you've been right so far.
No,
5 years later, here we are, and you've
Yep.
been right.
No, that is something I can feel in you. I mean, that's about your evolution for creating a network, finding a new opportunity, sort of piecing together the various components of it. So I mean
But that speaks to your ability to see it.
well, that's what I can do after the time that I've had, is because I had to do it for myself. See, it all grows out of, so your structure that you've put together is something that you needed to do for yourself to make progress. And then what that does is it gets translated into your unique ability, so that you then use that as a process for success, and then you can apply it in the world. And that's what the world becomes interested in, and that's where your biggest upside is.
Yeah. Wow. I wish I would have taken that. I'm going to have to go back and clip that out. That's powerful right there. I'm going to quote that for you. That was really good. Strategic coach was definitely one of the life altering things for me. And once again, Jim, the ripple effect of that, 30-minute wait to meet Adam Lewin was meeting you, and then look at the ripple effect from there.
Sure.
And I hope that I can do the same for other people down the road.
Oh, you will. You are, and you will.
So you can find Jim Havens companies at havenslimited.com, cardinaltitle.com, rudolphltd.com.
Yep.
Jim, I appreciate it. If you need your net worth evaluation done and you want to accelerate the growth, you better call Jim Havens. Take the keys out of your car and give them to this man right here and let him drive, and just sit in the back and shut up. He'll take it from there.
Thank you, Jake. It's
Appreciate it,
wonderful.
Jim. Thanks. This episode is brought to you by Max Effort Muscle. For all your supplement needs, go to maxeffortmuscle.com.